Welcome to The Deep Dive. Today, we're kicking off something a bit special. It's a series designed specifically to help you prepare for the CSWIP 3.1 Welding Inspector Exam.
That's right.
Our goal isn't just, giving you the answers to multiple choice questions. We really want to unpack the concepts behind them so you understand why an answer is correct, not just what it is. We'll keep the pace clear, nice and deliberate, so everyone, especially maybe non-native English speakers, can follow along and really get these insights. Useful for the exam and for your career, too.
Absolutely. True mastery really comes from understanding that why. It's about building critical finishing skills.
Right.
Skills you absolutely need to be a successful welding inspector out in the field, not just passing a test. That deeper insight, that's what sets you apart.
Okay, let's dive right into our first question then. Question number 1. The presence of iron sulfides in a weld bead may cause. And the options are A, solidification cracking, B, hydrogen cracking, C, lamellar tearing, D, weld decay.
Okay, so the correct answer here is a solidification cracking.
Solidification cracking. Okay, so why that one? What's actually happening in the weld when this occurs?
Well, solidification cracking is a pretty significant issue. It happens right at the end during the very last stages of the weld solidifying as that molten metal is turning solid.
Right, at the end.
Exactly. And when you have these iron sulfides present, they form these thin films, low melting point films, and they tend to gather along the grain boundaries as the metal solidifies.
Okay.
Think of them like weak seams inside the structure. Now, as the weld metal cools further, it naturally shrinks.
Stress builds up.
Precisely. Stress builds up. And because these sulfide films at the boundaries are the last bits to solidify and they're inherently weak, they can't take that stress. They tear apart. And that's your crack right there in the weld bead itself.
Understood. So they're like these built-in weak points just waiting to fail under that solidification strain. How do the other options differ then? Like timing-wise or how they happen?
That's a good point. Timing is actually key. Hydrogen cracking, for instance. That usually happens after the weld is completely solid. Could be hours, even days later sometimes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a different beast. Leak to hydrogen, the steel's microstructure being susceptible, and tensile stress.
Okay.
Lamellar tearing, that's different again. That happens in the parent steel plate, not usually in the weld itself. It's tied to stresses pulling through the thickness of the plate, often where there are inclusions.
Right, the Z direction stress we sometimes talk about.
Exactly. And weld decay, that's a corrosion thing, specifically in some stainless steels, usually linked to chromium carbides forming near the weld.
So they're all bad, but different mechanisms, different locations, different times.
Spot on. Solidification cracking is that immediate consequence of those nasty low melting point films right in the solidifying weld.
So the key takeaway for an inspector is, if a crack shows up as the weld is cooling, think solidification first.
That's a really good starting point, yeah. It points you towards looking at the chemistry of the weld pool, the cooling rates, things like that.
That's a powerful diagnostic clue. The timing tells a story. Okay, let's move to question 2. A STRA test is used to measure the options. A, tensile strength of the welded joint. B, level of residual stress in butt joints. C, fracture toughness of the HAZ. D, through thickness, ductility of a steel plate, the Z direction.
And the answer here is D, through thickness, ductility of a steel plate, the Z direction.
The Z direction. That sounds quite specific. Can you break that down? What does it mean for materials and why test it?
Yeah, it is specific. So imagine a steel plate, right? It has length, it has width. The Z direction is the thickness, perpendicular to the surface you usually see, the rolling plane.
Gotcha. Through the thickness.
Exactly. And this dimension is surprisingly important because a material's properties can be very different in that direction compared to along its length or width. This STRA test, it specifically measures how much the material can stretch or deform its ductility when you pull on it through that thickness, perpendicular to the surface.
And why is that specific ductility so critical?
Well, it's all about resisting lamellar tearing, which we touched on briefly before.
Right.
Lamellar tearing is that nasty cracking that can happen in the parent plate, especially in really restrained joints where the welding stresses are pulling directly across the plate's thickness. If that plate material doesn't have good ductility in the Z direction, it's much more likely to tear under that stress. Think big structures, offshore platforms, pressure vessels. Failure there could be catastrophic.
So it's a very specialized test for a specific but dangerous failure mode. Something a standard tensile test might just miss.
Completely miss, yeah. A standard tensile test pulls along the length usually. Doesn't tell you much about the Z direction properties.
So how vital is it for an inspector to know when this test is needed, not just rely on, say, the mill certificate data?
Oh, it's crucial, because generic data often overlooks these through thickness properties. You can't just assume.
And the other options, why aren't they right for STRA?
Well, tensile strength, like we said, that's a standard tensile test. Residual stress, that needs things like hole drilling or X-ray diffraction. Totally different methods.
Okay.
And fracture toughness, measuring how well a material resists a crack growing, that involves specific fracture mechanics tests, often with pre-cracked samples.
Right.
So yeah, STRA is purpose-built for that Z-direction ductility, assessing that specific risk of lamellar tearing.
It's fascinating how these tests evolve to find these hidden vulnerabilities.
Really shows the precision needed in material testing for critical applications.
Okay.
Question 3. The current polarity used for TIG welding, all materials except aluminium and magnesium, is options: A, DC negative, B, DC positive, C, ACD, square wave AC.
Right. For this one, the answer is A, DC negative.
DC negative. Okay, this feels pretty fundamental for TIG. Why is this the go-to for most metals? What's happening with the electricity, the heat? It is fundamental. So with DC negative, that's direct current electrode negative, or DCEN, the tungsten electrode is negative and the workpiece is positive.
Okay.
This means the electrons flow from the electrode to the work. And the upshot is most of the heat, like 2/3 of it, gets concentrated right there on the workpiece.
Oh, so focused heat.
Exactly, which gives you really good deep penetration and typically a narrower weld bead. Great for things like steel, stainless, copper, titanium. Plus, because the electrode isn't getting the bulk of the heat, it stays cooler.
Which is good for the tungsten.
Yeah, it means you can often use a smaller electrode, keep a sharper point, and get much better arc control, more precision. It's just very efficient for putting heat where you need it for a strong weld.
That makes sense. Deep penetration, good control. Key benefits. But you highlighted the exceptions, aluminum and magnesium. Why do they need something different, like AC or DC positive?
Yes, aluminum and magnesium. They're tricky. They form this really tough, stubborn oxide layer on the surface.
Right, I've heard about that. It melts at a higher temperature.
Much higher than the metal underneath, yeah. So if you hit it with DC negative, the arc struggles to break through that oxide effectively. You end up with poor fusion, maybe inclusions, just a messy weld.
Okay, so you need to clean it off somehow.
Exactly. And that's where AC or DC positive DCP comes in. With DCP, the electrode is positive, so the electron flow reverses for part or all of the cycle. This actually creates a kind of arc cleaning action. It bombards the surface and helps break up that oxide layer.
Like sandblasting with electrons.
Sort of, yeah. A cathodic cleaning effect. AC, especially square wave AC, is often preferred because it gives you the best of both worlds. You get the penetration from the electrode negative part of the cycle and the cleaning action from the electrode positive part.
Clever. Alternating between cleaning and penetrating.
Precisely. So understanding polarity and how it interacts with oxides and heat flow, it's absolutely fundamental for TIG quality. And for an inspector, checking the machine setting against the material. That's a basic but critical check.
Definitely. Matching the process to the material's specific challenges. Crucial stuff. All right, moving on. Question 4. An arc strike, stray flash, on a steel component is regarded by some codes as unacceptable because options: A, it will cause copper contamination. B, it may cause hard spots. C, it may give cracking. D, both B and C.
Okay, for this one, the answer is D, both B and C, hard spots and cracking.
Right. So even a little accidental zap on the surface, it's not just cosmetic. It can actually cause these serious issues. How does that happen metallurgically?
Yeah, it's easy to dismiss them as minor blemishes, but the metallurgy is quite concerning. An arc strike is basically a tiny area where the arc accidentally touched down outside the weld joint itself.
Okay.
When that intense arc hits that small spot, it heats up incredibly fast, super localized, intense heat. But then because it's such a small area surrounded by a big mass of cold metal, it cools down extremely rapidly. It's essentially quenched.
Like dropping hot metal in water.
Very much like that, yeah. A very fast quench. And in many steels, that rapid heat up and super fast cool down cycle transforms the microstructure in that tiny spot into something very hard and brittle. Often untempered martensite.
The hard spots.
Those are your hard spots.
Yeah.
And because they're so hard and brittle, they can't really flex or yield like the surrounding steel. This makes them incredibly prone to cracking.
Okay.
The cracks might form almost immediately from the thermal shock of cooling, or they can act as initiation points for cracks later on under operational stress. They're dangerous little stress raisers.
Wow. So something that looks tiny could actually be the starting point for a major failure down the line.
Absolutely. I remember a case study, actually. A small arc strike on a bridge component. Looked like nothing. Years later, it was found to be the initiation point for a fatigue crack. It's a hidden danger.
That really drives home why codes are so strict about them. It's not just about looks, it's about structural integrity.
Precisely. And just to touch on option A, copper contamination. While that is a serious defect, it's usually caused by other things, like maybe touching the electrode to a copper backing bar, not typically a direct result of the arc strike on steel itself. The main issue with arc strikes is that local hardening and cracking risk.
Understood. Look beyond the surface impression. Good advice for inspectors. Okay, let's tackle our final question for this session, question 5. Weld spatter during MMA welding is most likely to be caused by options. A, excessive current. B, incorrect baking and storage of electrodes. C, bad batch of electrodes. D, too low an OCV.
And the most likely cause here is A, excessive current.
Spatter. Yeah, we see that a lot, those little balls of metal stuck everywhere. So what exactly is it, and how does too much current cause it in MMA?
Right. Spatter is basically those small droplets of molten metal that get ejected from the weld pool during the process. They fly out and solidify on the plate or wherever they land.
Okay.
Now, with MMA welding or stick welding, if you crank the current up too high, you're putting way too much energy into that arc. This makes the arc itself really forceful, almost explosive sometimes. And it also overheats the weld pool, making it very fluid and turbulent.
Right.
So you've got this combination of a violent arc force pushing on a super hot runny puddle.
Yeah.
It literally just blasts droplets of molten metal out of the pool.
Ah, okay. Like turning a garden hose on full blast into a bucket, it just splashes everywhere.
That's a pretty good analogy, yeah.
Yeah.
Too much force, too much energy leads to ejection.
So the other options. Incorrect baking, bad electrodes, low voltage. They can cause problems, but they aren't the usual suspect for excessive spatter itself.
Generally, no. Incorrect baking or storage, that primarily leads to hydrogen problems, porosity, maybe cracking, not directly spatter.
Okay.
A bad batch of electrodes could potentially cause spatter, maybe that the flux coating is faulty, but excessive current is a much more common, direct operational cause that the welder controls. And too low an OCV open circuit voltage that mostly causes issues with starting the arc or keeping it stable. It doesn't usually cause more spatter. If anything, a weak, unstable arc might cause less, although the weld would be poor for other reasons.
Makes sense.
So for an inspector, yeah, you see spatter, but the key insight is often linking it back to the parameters being used, most likely the current setting.
So controlling those parameters isn't just about the weld quality itself, but also saving time and money on cleaning up all that spatter afterwards. Efficiency matters too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Less spatter means less grinding, less cleaning, more productivity. It all connects.
Well, we've certainly covered some really key areas today, haven't we? Diving into these questions gives such a good insight for the CSWIP 3.1 exam. We looked at iron sulfides and that risk of solidification cracking right as the weld cools. The specific purpose of the STRA test for checking that Z direction through thickness ductility against lamellar tearing.
Yep.
Why DC negative is the standard for TIG on most metals, giving that great penetration and control. The hidden dangers of arcs, strikes, those hard spots, and potential cracks.
Definitely not just cosmetic.
And finally, how excessive current is the most common culprit behind weld spatter in MMA. Hopefully, this deep dive has given you not just some answers for the exam, but a deeper practical grasp of these welding inspection points.
And maybe it leaves you with a question to think about. How does an inspector's ability to go beyond just spotting a defect to really understanding its root cause, its implications, how does that elevate them? They move from just being a checker, ticking boxes, to become a crucial problem solver, a guardian of safety in really critical industries. That deeper understanding, that's where the real value lies.
That's a great thought to reflect on. Excellent point. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive today. We really look forward to continuing the CSWIP 3.1 exam prep series with you next time. Keep learning, keep questioning, and we'll see you then.